Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Constructive Criticism. I'm your host, Spencer, and I am joined by my co-host, a man who Mason says is going to X for the next Pro Tour, Michael Hinderocker.
Well, I hope I can live up to Mason's lofty expectations. I will only say that I expect that not to happen.
Yeah, I X4'd day one of a Pro Tour once.
Yeah, I've done that a bunch of times. It's it's not the worst. It's okay.
You got to come back, play another. You get your free
I've never
packs.
8-0'd day two. I'll put it this way: I've never 8-0'd day two.
Yeah, exactly. You got some lofty expectations going into day two, so it's Mason put this in chat already, but Mason's follow-up was, I do that in leagues all the time. You can do it at the Pro Tour. And then Michael and I were like, you've X4'd a league in your life? Like, why?
I just don't hate myself that much. I mean, like a little bit, but at a certain point, it's just time to drop.
Yeah. So, with that being said, we won't be talking about the Pro Tour as much this week, but we've been talking about going from FNM to whatever the next level is for you. So, we're really excited to talk about that this week. Before we get there, though, don't forget to check out our sponsors at Oasis Games and Fusion Gaming, as well as the Mana Base, because it's really the Mana Base, but Fusion Gaming sponsors them. So I kind of like to include it all. If you use the code CCMTG at checkout, you can get 15% off of your first order at Oasis Games. It's an amazing deal. I know people who bought modern decks, they bought standard decks. They've really gotten the bang for their buck. We had a person that was like, hey, I'm really trying to get into standard. It's kind of expensive right now. What can I do? I was like, have you checked out Oasis Games before? One of our podcast listeners was like, no, you always talk about it. I should definitely do that. I was like, don't forget to use the code. And they're like, this saved me. I bought 2 standard decks. It saved me over $100. And I now can pivot at my PPTQ scene. So there's so much you can do with the code. If you can find decks in your lap, things like that, it's pretty cool. Fusion Gaming is also amazing. Mason Clark, our technical producer, he just bought Carnes from Oasis and Fusion for combined under $100. So both of our sponsors are amazing. If you're looking for sealed product, magic stuff, Oasis and Fusion, I believe, now both have multiple games too. So if you're into other TCGs, check them both out. And then you can check out the rest of the network. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Just for reference, I know we got a bunch of Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z cards in stock, or Dragon Ball Super rather in stock. So if you're interested in those,
and if you really like really, really difficult card games, Dragon Ball Super is one to check out.
Yeah, that game makes my head hurt.
Dude, Michael's a future Platinum Pro, and it is not even close. It is the hardest game I've ever played.
So I think it's harder though because I don't know any of the characters or whatever. So when I'm looking at it,
I know all of the characters.
I can't tell them apart.
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
trust me.
My actual
the game
complaint,
is just
My actual complaint is that every card is like a full art card. So when you're trying to read all of these paragraphs of text on a full art card, I
can't do it.
It makes me feel old.
Is that what it was? I just felt like it was a lot of text.
Yeah, it seems sweet. Like if you like Dragon Ball, you should probably check it out. I know that it's supposed to be pretty well balanced and a lot of fun.
Yeah, the aggro deck. So I played basically mono red in the format. Got to win a couple games with that. It's a super cool game. I know that Pokemon is like basically Infinity Wars right now. It's like everybody versus one deck in both standard and extended. So there's some cool stuff going on in other TCGs.
That makes the decisions easy, right?
Yeah. This podcast, you just want to be Thanos. This podcast is about Magic, however, and we want to let you know that you can listen to both Limited Time Only with me and Danny. We actually skipped 2 weeks. We broke my rule. I said I was going to cancel the podcast if we did that. I'm not going to do it. I'm not a man of my word, but we will be back this Thursday. To be fair,
you could say it in a nicer way to yourself. You don't have to say I'm not a man of my word. You can just say Danny had to travel for work and is crazy busy.
That's not why we missed weeks.
Well, you could say that's the reason you missed.
Okay,
weeks.
I'll blame it on Danny's work. That's fair. But either way,
it's a true but related fact.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, you can check out Limited Time Only with me and Danny Cathro, another Silver Pro, future Bronze Pro in Utah.
I mean, I think we all kind of feel that way sometimes. You have a bad event, and you're like, oh god, I'm just bad at this game, aren't I?
Dude, that's how I feel my last couple GPs. And then we also have Common Knowledge, a popular podcast about improving the game. And their last podcast was really good. I've been in communication with them, helping them produce the show, really honing it in and figuring out like what their identity is. So check both of those out. And then thank you everybody for listening to this show. We are changing this up. We're moving things around, and our next segment, and it will be the first segment every week from now on, is hashtag Always Improving. Hashtag Always Improving is the point of this podcast. We believe if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, and we want to be doing what we can all the time to be improving ourselves. I'm really, really excited about this week's hashtag Always Improving, Michael, because first of all, I know how deep you are into Magic right now, and like how heads down you are. And then I also have been super heads down. I've tried probably 6 different standard decks in the last week, really testing as many different things as I can for the upcoming Team RPTQ to try and help my team out. So we're both, and decks that I'm also helping Matt and you out for the Pro Tour with, giving Matt feedback on some deck lists that he sent me, as well as hopefully spending some time tonight testing. So, Michael, why don't you talk really quickly about your hashtag improving moments for the week, and then I'll go.
Yeah, so I've been running a lot of draft and standard, just trying to figure out what makes sense. It's nice that we've sort of had enough events that the metagame has crystallized a little bit. It's a lot easier to figure out what you want to play when you know what exists, frankly. And I think that one of my best skills as a player is trying to figure out what to play given a known metagame. So that kind of setup where we're working with a little bit more information has been really helpful to me. Also just drafted a ton. But I also was able to take some time and play just some Magic for fun. Modern 1K on Saturday with Clan Ironworks, which is pretty amusing, and split in the top 4. So it was a good time.
Yeah, I why don't you talk really quickly about that? So, for those who don't know, Michael, as a Silver Pro, doesn't get actually playing PPTQs. So and this isn't just true of Utah. It sounds like most places in the country, since PPTQ started existing, it's really hard for tournament for like 1Ks, and they even got rid of GPTs because of them, for those type of tournaments to fire. So, Michael, when you get a chance to play in these type of tournaments, you really jump at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. I just don't get to play as much paper Magic, interact with as many people in the community as I would like, just because, like, working at Oasis, I typically don't want to spend a bunch of my evenings hanging out there, continuing to play games, or else they're going to have to, like, build me a bed, and it's going to be kind of sad. So I try to go home after work, but getting a chance to play a little bit on weekends where I'm not traveling is really nice. It's really fun to play a tournament where you get to sleep in your own bed and then come home again when you're done.
Yeah. So what is the biggest takeaway that you had from playing that deck this weekend?
It's just like it's really powerful. I had a turn 4 kill on the play through a Stony Silence and a Vendilion click. How
did that happen?
Well, just nature claimed the Stony Silence, and when he Vendilion clicked me, I just had 2 of the same piece, and it didn't really work out so well.
Oh, so not interestingly.
But no, it was like casually. But that's sort of the best thing about the deck, right? Like, you can casually play around a lot of hate. I think that the perception is probably that it's difficult to play, and the combo turns, while convoluted, are actually quite simple. You don't necessarily have a lot of choices. A lot of your choices are in setting up the combo turns, how you play around different pieces of hate, how you play around Thoughtseize, Surgical Extraction, different things like that. So if you're looking for a new modern deck, I would give it a shot. It's a really good time. Yeah,
so one of the things that so I played a lot of Eggs, but I actually played the Ironworks version of Eggs because Eggs drove me crazy. So I actually played the Ironworks version of Eggs where you kill them with Banefire. And watching some people stream the Ironworks deck, it's like, oh, the turns and setting up are actually a little bit similar to the games that I've played. So it actually is a deck that I am considering for Vegas all of a sudden. Go ahead.
It's a little awkward. I would say the main disadvantage is that a lot of the time you will have reached a point in your combo turn where it's basically deterministic, but you haven't shown a loop. So you're forced to continue drawing cards one at a time and explaining every action to your opponent. So I would say a lot of your combo turns end up being like 10 plus minutes.
Yep.
But the flip side is that in terms of actual decision making, it's mostly done by that point, except for sometimes trying to play around like a
happened. It all happened before that.
Right. By the time you actually end up with a Quarkline Ironworks at a scrap trawler and play, it's too late.
Yeah. Actually, I think this is true of Storm too, and people don't realize this, is that you're deciding how much time you have with Storm, right? So while you're not casting anything while you're doing this, you are counting and doing things with Storm and Modern that are similar to this. They're different because like the assemblation of the cards that you have to play around are different, but I do think that it's like that it is that mindset where it's like, okay, what can I beat? How can I beat it? What do I need to do this turn to make sure that I have a better chance next turn? Or do I need to execute this turn or the following turn? And you kind of play it by ear, is what I've noticed. Am I wrong here?
No, I think that's really true. And I think that like one of the things that has made Storm difficult for me when I've played with it in the past is just that my sense for mulligans, given the number of cantrips, is not always great. And I don't think my early turn sequencing is optimal. I also just don't know any great Storm players, so I don't have a good sounding board for getting better.
In Modern or just in general?
Well, I mean, I basically know no one who plays Modern Storm regularly.
Yeah, that's true. I was going to say, Matt Kling has probably played like 5,000
We've played a lot of games. Of the Gift Storm deck is just fairly different.
Oh, no. I meant Legacy Storm.
Right, but the permutations you're trying to set up are a little bit different, and I think until you get used to them... And, I mean, Quarkline Ironworks is kind of like this, too, but you have a lot of crutches, and it feels somewhere between kind of Storm and Lantern, and that's something I'm a little more comfortable with.
Yeah, that's fair. So for me, always improving this week was a few things. I've talked about AudioFi a lot on this podcast. And in the last couple months, the last 2 months, I haven't been able to use it because of just my life. And so this week I was trying to listen to articles and I was like, why isn't this working? And I went to Google and tried to figure it out. And I realized AudioFi, the app, doesn't exist anymore. And it was off my phone and I didn't know it. So I had to go buy a new app to listen to articles. I listened to the last article I listened to was PV's should you play a deck that you know or the best deck article, which was insane and everybody should read that article. And then so I started doing that again. And one of the things that my goal is every morning when I wake up to go through article lists and download the articles that I think are relevant to the thing that I'm trying to learn. And then execute upon those articles is the other thing that I'm going to try and do. And then I just played a ton of Magic. I 0-3'd my first Sealed League ever. I've never done that before. So that was cool. If you like lighting $24 on fire, that's how that feels. But other than that, I played green-red dinosaurs. I played green-black snake. I played Soul Tie. I played mono-red. Like, I played so much standard Magic just to kind of understand, like, what are people playing? What do you want to play against? And this is for two reasons. One, I thought I was going to play PPTQ last weekend, but we had kind of an emergency that I didn't get to do it. And then also, just getting ready for the RPTQ. And it's kind of cool. Like, I really feel like I'm in a good place in Standard, and I can move on to Modern. And this is one of the things that I think that people... Actually, I think, Michael, you had this problem for a small time and you fixed it, where you lose like one match with a deck and you just give up.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get sort of unrealistic expectations when you're in a small sample size with a deck.
Yeah, so I found myself kind of doing this with green-black, and so I switched to... So here's what happened, is I played green-black, and I went 4-1, 3-2 in competitive leagues, and I was like, well, this deck is obviously not good enough. So I switched to mono green, and then I just got trounced, and I was like, well, this deck is terrible. And then I switched to Sultai, and I had a 3-2-4-1. And it was like, okay, what's happening? And I kind of had to self-evaluate, like, do I think that if I don't 5-0 a league, my deck is bad? And I actually found myself in the same trap that I say a lot of people have. So I know people that will go 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, 3-2, 4-1, 4-1, 3-2, 4-1, 4-1, 3-2. And they're like, well, I can't 5-0, so this deck is bad. And it's like, look at your win percentage. And I went back and looked at my win percentage with different decks, and I was like, oh, I'm actually doing really well in Standard compared to not that long ago. I've really picked up my win percentage since I started playing Magic a lot again. And I think that what happened is I realized that I started not being honest with myself and my results. And I'm really excited to kind of take a step back, look at my results, look at my process, and try and hone both the process and see how it improves my results again. Because I'm in a really good situation with, I think, Team Constructive Criticism Worldwide, my testing team right now, is actually in a really good spot. In that we have a lot of people who are playing a lot of Magic, and it's now time to hone the process for all of these people who have very similar goals. And as the person that multiple people have told me I'm the leader of this team, it's now my job to try and help figure out who can help me hone this process and hone it. And I'm really excited for that. You know, as you can hear, I'm still a little sick. I can't talk very well. But I'm excited for kind of the future of this and the hashtag always improving moments that will come from this. So, yeah.
Sweet. I think in general, too, when you get into standard formats that are a little more solved and you're sort of playing the same 4 or 5 decks, most of your matches in a league, you're just going to find that, like, if you're 5-0ing regularly with something, you probably broke it. Yeah. And you're going to do that with a deck that people know, right? I mean, you're just not going to, like, trophy 4 times in a row with Snake. That's just not a realistic expectation.
And here's the other thing, too, is that I found that all of my matches were against decks that I just didn't even prepare for a little. And also, I was immediately misrepresenting decks as I was playing. So, for example, my one loss that I played with Green Red Dinosaurs this week was he played Swamp, the thing, the Cabal land, right? And I immediately put him on the Mono Black Control deck that I thought was doing well. And he wasn't even close to that. He was Mono Black Control, but it was completely different. I sideboarded incorrectly both times. Like, I sideboarded incorrectly again in Game 3. And it's like, hey, you're trapping yourself. Like, you are making a mental mistake. If I had just pulled up a deck list, I would have been like, he's playing nonsense. I need to play as though he's playing nonsense and try and guess what nonsense he's playing. But instead I was like, he's playing 70 of the 75 probably, or, you know, whatever. And it's just a mistake that I made. And I think you have to be realistic with yourself and also just be honest with your opponent. I can't put every opponent on net decking. I can't put every opponent on this play or that play. And while the thing is I'm trying to jam so many more games than I was at the beginning of this year, right? With my son getting older, it is a really regular bedtime, and I have like a couple more hours to play Magic in, and I think I'm trying to get too much out of those hours of Magic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes just progress doesn't always come linearly, and it doesn't come immediately. Right?
Yep, exactly.
Sometimes you really have to take with small things.
Yeah. So that's it for hashtag Always Improving this week. That's what we're doing. Let's get on to some of the things that people might be asking us. So no new Patreon shoutouts this week. If you want to be a Patreon, go to patreon.com/ccmtg. We really appreciate everybody that donates, that does the things that they can do to help us. I was looking over declines this week, or not declines. Sorry, that's not the right word. People that left, and every single person that left this month said that they were coming back. Like, it was, hey, I'm changing my banking information. Hey, I'm just in a rough spot. I just need give me a month, I'll be back. And it's kind of promising. Like I feel like we built a community that loves us and that wants to support us, but never feel like you have to. Like if you're going through a rough time, just leave. It's okay. Like Oasis Games and Fusion Gaming hook us up, and we're getting our hours worth of time from doing this. So
definitely. Well, and it's fun to get to interact with. It's fun to get to interact with listeners and just provide some feedback, and hopefully all learn together. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, one of the benefits you get from being a Patreon is the Patreon question. So this one says, I recently started testing with a group of players who want to do better at PPTQs and maybe even start playing a Grand Prix or two. Are there any best practices that you can give for sharing information or play testing for the first time? Quote, testing. I think he means with a testing team. I really love the show. I talked about always improving during a job interview in the last year and got the job. P.S. Don't let the haters get you down, Spencer. Michael wasn't here last week. I got some hate mail. I talked about it on the podcast.
In a patron question?
No.
I was like, damn, that's an aggressive patron question.
Somebody texted me the word bitch. And then we got an email or two that was like, basically, Spencer spends too much time on this. Or, like, you just can't please everybody, and I try to because I'm a people pleaser. But thank you. I know I shouldn't let the haters get me down. Well, let's talk about your question. So I've been on a few testing teams that I personally have started. It's like a thing I do. I don't know why.
Just can't make it easy for yourself.
You know, the thing is that for me, it's that I don't have time to do. And I'm trying to find a team of people that are similar enough to me that I can learn from and grow. And I think that all my teams have helped me, right? So we had like the Blue Creek team from like my first testing team ever that like we all started top 8 PDQs together. And then I had the Oasis Games team where I learned everything you shouldn't do as a testing team. And then I had the constructive criticism team where we just surrounded ourselves with the best players in Utah. Danny and Michael got silver. I think 6 of us qualified for the Pro Tour. Like, that was a great experience. And as things shifted, as Danny and Michael got silver, and their priorities changed, like it was clear that we needed to change. And then I've now tried to do CC Worldwide twice, but there were things I learned from each of them. And if you're doing it locally, I have one piece of advice that I wish I would have given myself way earlier. And that's that your time is valuable. And I know that these people are probably some of your best friends right now. But one of the mistakes that I made is with Team Oasis Games is spending too much time helping people that didn't have the same goals as me. So as long as you're all aligned, it won't matter what you do because you'll all be lifting each other up. But the number one thing you can do as a group is making sure you're aligned. Because when you're not, somebody's going to feel like they're wasting time.
I think that's a really good point. I think my main takeaways in general, just from trying to think about how I've gotten better, is really try to use the people around you as a resource. Try to learn from them, and if they're trying to learn from you, try to reciprocate. And I think you can all improve. You won't all improve at the same rate, but I think just if everyone is working with the goal of constant improvement, you can learn a lot from each other and a lot from playtesting, a lot from playing events. And there's something really nice about working with people local to you, people who are your friends. It's a really pleasant process. And I think that, at least as a starting point, working with people local to you is a great idea. It helps. it would be really hard to just like work with a bunch of people you don't know right off the bat. And I think just getting an idea of like getting your feet wet a little bit, figuring out what your goals really are, playing some bigger events, trying to test for them, just seeing what like the grind of this process, because really I think trying to play competitive Magic is very much a grind. Trying to kind of get used to that and used to sort of, is predicting a metagame a thing I can do? If I can figure out what I should play, can I play the right? Just like working on practicing the little things that go into every kind of big tournament preparation. It's really valuable and it'll stick with you for a long time.
Yeah, I think that I should clarify because maybe I'm at a place in my Magic career where I'm salty towards local testing teams. And that's a bad on my part. Like, let's be very clear. Like, I should be better about this. When I say that, like, make sure your priorities are aligned, it is because I believe that you're all going to start out. And one of the best parts about testing teams of any kind is always the beginning. Like, the beginning is like this beautiful encapsulation of like everybody trying to help everybody, and it's like everything you've ever wanted in a testing team, and it always happens. And then slowly things will change where somebody's going to do well, somebody's going to do less well, and over time it's going to shift. And right now, at the beginning piece that you're at, you need to maximize that moment where everybody's trying to lift each other up, because it's a really valuable moment.
Think of it like it's like you're brewing a deck, right? Like you're really into the idea and things seem really cool. And as you start to play with it, you'll notice some things you like. But also remember that, you're not like married to this, right?
Yeah.
You can iterate on it. You can keep some of the people who you work really well with. You'll, learn that you learn really well with some people and don't learn well with others. And like, it's not necessarily a personal judgment. Like, you're just trying to get better, and you will get better at getting better.
Yes, I agree. And what Michael and I are saying is like you can love these people forever. Like these people can still be your best friends forever. I don't know. Maybe Michael and I are the wrong people to ask about this, actually.
But like, just basically, you take what you can get out of it.
He's in a really good
hold on to it if it's not working.
This patron is in a really good moment, right? Where they're in that beginning moment where everybody is going to do everything that they can to help everyone else improve. And it is the best moment of that time. And you should maximize that moment. It's a thing of beauty. And it sounds to me, just from the question, that your goals right now are just to do better at PBDQs. So maybe none of you have won one yet. And when I think about this, I think about some of the Lehigh, the Utah County guys from Utah that really challenged some of the Salt Lake players here in Utah. After a while, there was this really big dominance from Quentin and myself and some of our teammates at the PBDQ level. And then all of a sudden, this just group of players from a little bit south of us was like, well, we can do what they're doing. And I think this was a microcosm of like even some of the things that you saw on the Pro Tour, where it's like all of a sudden Danny and Brad and Patch and some others were just like some of the best players at the PBDQ scene. And it's because they work together. So you're doing the right thing. Like whatever happens 6 months from now, you're doing the thing that's going to help you win those PBDQs.
Definitely.
So
definitely, it's just easier. You just need multiple people thinking about things.
Yeah, my best practice is to like honestly. You asked them on best practices for sharing information. I would make a Facebook group or like a Google Drive that you're sharing stuff in, and just have open communication. For me, localized testing, one of the beauties of it is being in the same room together. And it kind of that's actually probably my biggest complaint with the worldwide team that I'm testing with right now is that we're not in the same place, so we can't do this. And while Google Hangouts is like a great tool, I personally have always gotten more from being in a room with somebody and them beating my face in or me beating their face in and quickly adjusting. So it kind of just depends. But if you can do it, be together. But at the same time, don't be together at the detriment of yourself. I have friends that they have entire nights occupied to a group of people that don't have the same goals as them. So just always make sure that's number one. So kind of a long answer to the question. Let's move on to our power rankings. Every week on the show, if we can, we want to talk about power rankings. One of the things that I didn't announce on the podcast last week is this whole structure of the show is changing. And one of that is that we won't be doing a training grounds every week. We don't guarantee a power rankings every week. And we're just going to jam in the segments of the show that are really relevant for the time being. And this week we had a Modern Open. So we're going to talk about Modern because honestly, it's kind of a shakeup from what we would have been saying about Modern a week and a half ago. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think using the Star City results definitely affects that. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, let's talk about just some of these decks, Michael. If we even, I don't know what just happened, but my whole computer. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Let's see. Coming in at number 5, it looks like we have Boggles with 6 points. And these are all just from the Star City Open this weekend.
Is that correct, Mason? Hello?
Yeah.
So it sounds like just the main event is included, and at number 5 we have the Boggles deck. Michael, this is a deck that we've kind of mentioned quite a bit over the last, I don't know, like 2 months on the podcast. Some of the inclusions for this deck that might be the newest aren't actually that new. I think the newest inclusion might actually be Griffspoon. I think it plays Cartouche now too.
Sometimes they play Cartouche Solidarity. This list in particular is interesting in that he's cut the main deck Leyline of Sanctities, which is a little bit of a departure from what we've seen in the recent past, at least.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going backwards, right? So before, Leyline had just become an auto-include in the main to try and be different. I think that was when people were playing a lot of Jund and other styles of that deck. But if we look at the list that took third of the Open this weekend, he goes back away from that, which could be reasons that Jund popped back up. I'm not sure. I think that the third place might not be the same as some of the other lists you might have seen. But what stands out to you about? We've talked over the last couple times we talked about Modern how linear decks are better than they used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Boggles is sort of the most extreme example of this, but the real problem is that, like, when you're trying to construct a Jund deck, you're trying to figure out, like, what removal spells to play, you just don't have to make that same kind of... You don't have to make those same kind of hedgy decisions in linear decks. Like, you might have to play a few slots of interaction, but you don't fundamentally change how the deck is built because of what you anticipate playing against. And on the flip side, although you might be punished by playing some worse matchups, when you are playing an incredibly powerful linear strategy, I think just your basement for a matchup is much higher. Like, it's much harder to beat Tron with Jund a lot of the time than it is to beat, like, some of Boggles' bad matchups with Boggles. Or
because you just do the same thing every game, and you're really good at doing that thing. So because of that, I think what you're saying is very true, right? Because, like, you get to...
I just think your best hands are better.
Right.
Right.
We're saying the same thing. Because you're going to do the thing you're going to do. And they can either beat the thing you're going to do or they can't. Right? And that's very different from that Jund moment where it's like, did I build my deck correctly for this event? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you just see a lot of, like... You see a lot of decks looking to prey on interactive decks, and then like the interactive decks also prey on each other, right? Like we saw a lot of decks that look like they're designed specifically to beat humans do well this weekend. And it's just humans is kind of falls into an in-between category where it's like more interactive than something like Boggles, but probably less so than Jund. But even humans maybe was a little bit too easy to interact with in some ways this weekend.
Can we just say, so before this event, our top two decks would have been humans, and oh my gosh,
Hollow One.
Hollow, and thank you. And it's really funny. I like to move on to humans, and I specifically want to talk about the 5th place list because this is the most like streamlined list I've probably ever seen in this format.
Yeah, this is like kind of the new stock. It looks like people have mostly. I am not sure on the only. So people are starting to play 3 Thalias instead of 4. And one of the big things that's been a trend online lately is to play Restoration Angels in both the flex slots and the main. I think largely because they're very good against the removal heavy decks that people are trying to beat you with.
Yeah, they're very good against Jund. They're very good against. I mean, they also attack from a different angle.
They have flying. They make extra reflector mages. They sort of do like a baby phantasmal image thing, right? Yep. Like, so I think it's just
baby
a reasonable
being a 3/4
choice.
flyer.
Well, really, it's like it's not as tempo positive, but it's still
one of the. I think I watched the game on coverage today too, where they restoration Thalia's Lieutenant at instant speed, which you can't do without a vial and an image or a Thalia's Lieutenant. So it was funny because it's like I can't play around this Restoration Angel if you have it. Like I die either way, and that's an interesting line of attack.
It's a very good last card to have in your hand. If it is the last thing you end up with as the game sort of grinds into a board stall, it's almost certainly going to break that up. Then the only other thing is that people are playing Reclamation Sage over Vithian Renegades, and I'm not 100% sure on that one. We've seen this a bunch lately, and I guess it's just because it kills enchantments as well. I may sound stupid, but I don't really know what enchantments we're trying to kill with Reclamation Sage, but it seems harder to cast than Vithian Renegade, so I assume that's the reason.
Just because it's not a human?
Yeah, it's an elf shaman, so you can't as easily cast it off of Ancient Ziggurat.
You probably don't, right? Like, the number of hands that you have where you get to name elf with one of those two, unless it's in your opener, is probably pretty low.
It's low. It's very easily castable by a Noble Hierarch. It's a little hard to say, so I'm not sure exactly why we've seen that sort of movement, but I think that it's probably better against. It's probably another card you can board in against Boggles. Realistically, if I had to say why, that's probably what I would say.
So our next two decks we have tied for third. Let's go on to Jund. Jadine was tweeting about Jund all weekend, how her modern process. We had Jadine on the podcast a few weeks ago. Her modern process has become try a bunch of stuff, realize that I just want to play Jund, tune Jund 3 cards, play Jund. And she does really well with it. One of the things that I think it was the last time you and I did the podcast together, Michael, we talked about engineered explosives and how that was like one of the cards that like I wanted to play, but I didn't know that I would want to play it in Jund. She just was like, no, I'm just gonna play it. The other thing that I really noticed about her list is only one Liliana of the Last Hope in the 75, and it's in the board. Her main deck is very, very, very streamlined.
Yeah, I think like her deck is pretty stock, but at the same time, I think there's a lot to be said for just like knowing how you want to attack different matchups, knowing what you're trying to do. I mean, I think at this point for Jadine, and it's like not to say anything blasphemous, but it's like Reed Duke playing Jund, right? It's like this is just
this
is what Jadine is good at playing.
Yep.
Good at playing. She can play other things, but Jund in a pretty bad spot for it to realistically be like a way better choice.
No, it's true, and it's funny because Quentin and I had the conversation a lot. If you guys have listened to old podcasts, you know Quentin Pierce is a former co-host of the show, and he and I just talk about Jund a lot together for Modern. And at this point, like, I'm gonna either just if Jadine or Reed Duke have posted a Jund list in Modern, I'm going to try that before I try my own ideas. Like that, I believe that is where Jadine has elevated herself with Modern Jund.
Yeah, I also think that when you look at her list, she really does have a lot of cards for like the humans matchup. It's clear. I don't think this is a deck you would play without liking your humans matchup. And while I've generally felt humans slightly favored, that's probably not true if the Jund player you're playing against is fantastic and knows exactly, you know, how they want to sequence lands, how much damage they want to take off lands versus like just being really experienced in a matchup, knowing all the trade-offs and why you're making the plays you're making goes a long ways.
So one of the things that we see in Jadine's list that I'd love to get your opinion on is the 2 Treetop Village, 2 Raging Ravine. She's actually playing at least 1 less manland than most lists right now. Is that just the linear speed of the format, Michael? You think that she made that concession too?
Yeah, I think there just aren't that many really grindy matchups, and playing lands that don't like come into play tapped without an option, like you can't even pay life to override it, is just a hard sell. Like,
yeah, I agree.
When you're playing against Jeskai, you're really happy you have Treetop Village. In most other matchups, it's kind of a nightmare.
Let's go on to the other deck that tied for 3rd place. I'm going to do Pyromancer. This deck took 1st place. Can I just say, I've tried this deck probably 4 times now. I can't play it. Am I bad at Magic? This deck, every time I play it, feels like the worst deck I've ever played.
I love this deck. I almost
you
played
would.
it.
I actually think that
Rivals
this deck would fit you so perfectly, and me so not perfectly. I can't do it. And the thing is like, I feel like the only games I win involve Young Pyromancer and Lingering Souls. And if I don't have a draw that involves both of those, I feel like I lose.
Okay, here's the secret.
Okay.
Never play your 4th land.
Because you just want to Faithless Looting it away?
Yeah, I mean, you only play your 4th land like on the turn you're playing Bedlam Marveler mostly. If I had to give you one piece of advice with this deck, it's stop playing land.
I can try that. I'm willing to try League again with this deck and do that.
It's really, like, I just think this deck is a good...
also,
this list looks like it's pretty heavy in the Blood Moons in the main deck.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk about that because I think that's a little weird. I will say, though, what I said is not true because all of the games where I got to draw Collective Brutality and have it beneficial, I also won, and I didn't mention that. Those games you win by a landslide, and it's not close.
Yeah, this deck can create real snowballing advantage. Bedlam Reveler is just absurdly powerful, with Faithless Looting and Lingering Souls in particular. I think this deck is a really good time. I don't know that I'm the best with it, and there are certainly some matchups that I was really struggling with, but I do think that this deck is good, and I do think that it's a deck that if it looks appealing to you is absolutely worth dumping some time into.
Yeah, I do think that if you enjoy discarding your Bedlam Reveler and getting it back with Gulligan's Command, this is like the funnest deck you could possibly play.
It's good at sort of changing the game.
How it's using its
resources, good at seeing. Right? It's good at seeing a lot of cards over the course of a game. It's good at using its mana really efficiently. There are a lot of skills that I think this deck teaches that are. This deck reminds me a lot of playing Legacy. Like the same things you're trying to do with Brainstorm and Legacy, you're trying to do with Faithless Looting in this deck. Like really being careful about how many lands you're playing.
I'm gonna make a promise. I'm going to try this deck again, based upon the things you just said, because everything you're saying, I love in Legacy and I love doing. And as I'm looking at the deck list, I'm like, maybe I'm playing it wrong, and I want to try it again. because I'm looking for a deck like this for Vegas. And the thing is I do think that in specific metagames, this is just like a better Jund deck. But I just don't have fun. So I don't
Bedlam
know.
Reveler goes way over the top of anything Jund ever does, basically.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like Bloodbraid Elf if Bloodbraid Elf always hit Ancestral Vision.
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna try this again.
I mean,
and I will
that card is
back.
like kind of ridiculous. Yeah.
I'll
yeah,
try
let
and
me
make
know.
this
I really enjoy this one.
I'll try and make this an always improving moment for me because I think that I could definitely improve on this front because it's something that I've tried because like it. You look at the cards and it's like, oh, this is a Spencer deck, but it's like, oh man, I can't win. Like, and maybe my expectations are too. I don't know.
It's good against humans and affinity. You tend to your unfair matchups can be a little tricky. But anything trying to play creatures, like your spells just line up really well against.
Can we talk really quickly? I said we were kind of going to skim over it, but I would like to wrap it up with this list plays a lot of Blood Moons in this main deck.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting. I think it's kind of a cool way to attack some of your worst matchups. Both Bedlam Reveler, well, I mean, Bedlam, so playing a lot of collective brutalities in the main deck along with the Faithless Lootings really goes a long way towards turning dead cards into live cards. And one of the things I would say about this deck, if you're interested in picking it up, is don't cast spells that don't matter just to cast them. Mm-hmm. Like, don't play Lightning Bolt because you had an open mana. Play a Lightning Bolt because you have to kill the creature that you're Lightning Bolting. Or
well,
because...
it's really important for multiple reasons, right? Because your creatures in this deck are very, very small. So if you waste your Lightning Bolt doing something stupid with it, you will lose that incremental advantage you'll build through your other spells. And go ahead.
No, that's true. You have to you have to value the ability to get tokens from Young Pyromancer relatively highly, but really what you have to do is use Collective Brutality and Faithless Looting as card advantage engines, and cards that are less effective into cards that are more effective. Yeah. And if you do that effectively, your Bedlam Revelers become more powerful. Your Faithless Lootings become a lot more powerful. One of the things I've been interested in lately is like Grixis Shadow playing a bunch of Faithless Lootings for kind of the same reason. I think that card is just really, really enjoyable.
Didn't a Jund Shadow list like that played Traverse just 5-0 like last week?
I'm sure in Modern everything 5-0s. Okay. I mean, if you're willing to dig through a couple of dumps, you can probably find anything.
I think I saw a sweet Jund list that played white out of the sideboard for Ranger. That was like a Faithless Looting Traverse deck.
Yeah, I could believe that. I mean, I just wanted to use it to control Flood mostly, but sure. It's a really powerful card, and I really enjoy playing with it.
Well, let's go on to the number one deck. It was number one by a lot, and this is kind of like I said, it's kind of interesting. There are a few cards that I just want to talk about. So we have Jessica Control took second. It took number one in our power rankings, with 4 Snapcaster Mage, 4 Cryptic in the main. Just huge numbers, and then it does have Teferi and then Gideon to kind of wrap up its suite of Planeswalkers for the second place list. But people were just kind of about Teferi this weekend in Modern, it seemed like.
Definitely. I think that the card is just really good with both like Lightning Helix and Logic Knot. And it's an interesting one. It's one that people haven't explored yet as much as maybe some of the other Planeswalkers. I think another list that, but I think like mostly the Logic Knot. Logic Knot is probably the ideal card to have with Teferi. But the ability to handle a variety of permanents with it, like if you have to use it as a big removal spell, it's totally fine. And if you get to plus it, it just runs away with a game so quickly. It has so much loyalty. It allows you to cast spells during your main phase, or like activate Search for as canted during your main phase. It lets you do all kinds of cool things with your mana that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think that these lists have done really well is they get to play like Search for Escanta and Serm's Visions to find lands to get them almost exactly to 5. Because one of the things that some of these control decks were doing before is they're like trying to get a lot of lands into play to maybe activate their search for Escantas or play a Sphinx's Revelation, right? And because of how once you get to 5 lands with Teferi, you get to untap lands and like have just tons of extra mana every turn. And so the deck really maximizes that and gets to play 1, less lands than the Jeskai control decks were playing before, and 2, more efficient spells, right? So, I mean, if all you need is 5 lands, like playing your Wrath of Gods and Supreme Verdicts and things like that is really powerful. Playing, getting to double spell is a lot easier, which is something control decks just love to do, right? And you
Sure,
don't
we only need
have
6 lands for Supreme Verdict Cryptic in the same
exactly.
sequence, right?
It's crazy. Which, when you look at these lists, you think 4 cryptic commands plus 4 Snapcaster Mage, like that's an insane number of these style of effects. But the truth is that you get to maximize your mana because of Teferi, and that is something really powerful in these lists.
I think so too. I think being able to maximize the amount that you can play like a tap out control deck. I think the list that took second even had a Baneslayer Angel in the sideboard. But Teferi really allows you to use mana on your own turn in a way that you probably weren't able to before, while also presenting a proactive threat that will end the game if your opponent leaves it unchecked. So I think it does a lot of things really nicely, and it also plays better from behind than Jace the Mind Sculptor because it effectively only costs 3 mana on the turn you play it, plus goes up to 5 rather than being at 3. So it's much harder to kill, and often you're going to have to kill it through either a Logic Knot, a Path, a Bolt, or a Lightning Helix, or some combination of these. And I think that just like, given how creature-centric Modern is right now, that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, if you were in a different format, Jace the Mind Sculptor would just be the better fit, right? But the reason that everybody's all hyped on this is because it is doing something different that fits better into the format. So,
I agree.
I will say that it looks like multiple of these lists also are playing engineered explosives, and it looks like the 19th list is playing the Baneslayer Angel that you talked about, engineered explosives. Like they are saying they're making a clear like Teferi is a huge part of this deck when you see stuff like that.
Right, that I can tap mana on my turn and pass with a counter spell up and the ability to protect my Teferi.
Yeah. So that is it for the power rankings. Those are the decks that did well in Modern this weekend. We're gonna take a quick break, and we will be right back. All right, we are back. Thank you so much, everybody, for waiting. Thank you so much to the podcast listeners for understanding. Sometimes in live shows, you just gotta mix things up. With that being said, Michael, I was really glad that you mentioned the card that you mentioned during the power rankings because it is our card of the week. And I just want to talk really quick about how much equity Logic Knot has gained in Modern over the past couple of months. We talked about this card, I feel like a month ago. We didn't give a card of the week, but Michael, what makes this card of the week?
It's just really good. Like, it's just
it's
mostly
like insane
counterspell,
right now.
right? Like, I think that this card, it's hard to play 4 of, just because when you actually draw like the 3rd and 4th in the same game, they're not counterspell anymore. But the secret is that on turn 2, it's basically always counterspell, right? I mean, you like have a fetch land in your graveyard or whatever your opponent taps out, and you force spike it, and that's great. And on turn 8, it's counterspell, and on turn 15, it's counterspell. It scales really well, and it plays really nicely with Teferi.
Yeah, I think that even before Teferi, this card was getting equity, and then as we watched this deck get a maximize, like this was a 1 of, and then a 2 of, and then with Teferi, it's now a 3 of, right? And it's really gained a lot of ground, and I think a big piece of that is it protects you. Like, it protects you early. It protects your planeswalkers. It does a lot of things. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, because I've only played like 2 matches with this deck. But I really like that I get to play my Logic Knot to turn off my Search for Azcanta flip. It was like...
Well, I mean, you never have to flip Search for Azcanta, but...
Oh, that's true. That's true. It felt... That's true. I was on Cockatrice, so I guess I didn't notice that.
But I do think it actually plays really nicely with Search for Azcanta, binning things a bit more fuel.
I guess I get my Search for Azcanta was fueling it either way, but I felt like a double bonus almost.
Yeah, I think it's just a really solid Magic card. I think as long as playing control decks is a reasonable strategy, we're going to be seeing this one, frequently. It's just good. I
think so too. One of the things that I really liked about Logic Knot is, I think we've seen it now in both Grixis control, Jeskai control, and then I know that some of the Grixis Death Shadow lists played it for a minute, and so it's seeing more play than I would expect of a card like that, and it's something you need to be thinking about, right? Why are they holding up the mana they're holding, and why do they specifically do it in the way that they did it? And I feel like Modern has never had that kind of counterspell outside of
the one thing I will say about Logic Knot is that I like it better in the blue-white shell than in the Grixis shell, because I think its interaction with Kolaghan's command can be awkward, in that you both don't want to delve Kolaghan's commands and don't want to delve all your creatures.
Yeah, that's true.
And that deck is also often playing Tasigur, so I do think Logic Knot is at its best in these blue-white X shells.
Well, and that might also be one of the reasons that those decks were playing one Logic Knot, and these decks get to go up on Logic Knot.
Right. I just think that's a pretty powerful reason, because when you look at situational counterspells, the Grixis decks have to play more of them, whereas getting to play 3 Logic Knots, it's really like getting to just play 3 actual counterspells.
No, it really is. Dude, this is why I've almost switched entirely to MTGO, by the way, is like this thing like where you just get to learn what cards do naturally. I don't know. Anyway. I feel like I was cheating on my Search for Azcantas. It just shows you what I know. Okay, cool. So we talked about the decks that play this card. Why is Logic not fitting in this format so well, though? Like, if the format's so linear, why is Counterspell good? Can I just doesn't it just not matter which spell you counter?
So I think that can be true against some decks, and I certainly think that this card is probably weaker against something like humans than it is a lot of your other matchups. But I think that we have a lot of kind of combo-centric decks right now, or decks that, if not fully combo, are really working off of combinations of a couple of cards, and Logic Knot is just really good at breaking those up. It's really good at protecting your planeswalkers. It just scales well through all stages of the game.
Cool. Awesome. So that will go into our list of people that are going to win Card of the Week this month. Don't forget that if you're a patron of $3 or more, you enter to win the Card of the Week for the month, and we will just ship out some cards. It's pretty sweet. It's cool that we get to do this. So, what are you playing this week and why? So this is something we used to do all the time that we took away because it didn't feel valuable. But I think that the truth is that Michael and I now play enough Magic that we should share this information with you because it's really easy information for us to share with you. So I'll go first, Michael. And the things that I've been playing the most are green-based decks for the team RPTQ preparation. Just to kind of understand like what standard shells are good. Not even because here's the thing: is we're really far away from the team RPTQ. So most of my testing is just understanding like if green is a color that we're gonna have to use, which I think you're really close to almost having to do it unless you can split your white decks really well. What are good green decks? So that's been most of my play testing. And then next week it will almost be entirely Scapeshift and Modern, just to get in reps to know like what is the Scapeshift list I would want to take to Vegas if I played Scapeshift, and then switching to different decks to figure out like, okay, I know this is the Scapeshift I would want to iterate on. Now, are there just insane decks that I'm missing? So for me, I played Green Red Dinos a lot. I think I played 2 or 3 leagues with it, and then I played way more than that with Greenbox Snake. And I learned a few things that I'm going to try and iterate on this week if I do play Standard. And that's an Adventurer's Impulse is like... It is... Because there aren't green-red Planeswalkers you want to grab outside of Chandra, it is in fact the exact same card as Oath of Nissa for the most part in these decks. And I already loved that card. So that was probably my biggest takeaway, and like why I'm playing these decks. Which also makes me wonder if Dinosaurs isn't the correct way to go with green red, because if I get both green and red at this team RPTQ, it might be better for me to build an Adventurer's Impulse deck that plays green and red, which means that I don't need Commune and I don't need to worry about the monsters that I play, and I get to play things like Glorybringer and try and maximize green red in that aspect. So that's kind of what I'm playing and why. What about you?
Well, I've played a bunch. I've played a lot of things, and I think the best card in Standard right now, a pretty good version, is History of Benalia.
I played a lot of that too.
I think the card is just like...
Can we talk about that for a second?
I thought it was good, and I think it's better than I thought it was.
Can we just say that the first History of Benalia is kind of whatever, but when you play the second one, the game's usually over?
I mean, it's also usually over if you lead on a 2-drop Knight into History of Benalia.
Yeah, so I actually think that's separate. I actually think that that's just like maximizing the value.
But what I mean is that if you're playing like both, if you're playing at least one Knight plus 4 histories, you're probably going to win anytime you draw a double history on the play. Like, it's not really a beatable sequence.
Do you actually think that's not just true if you didn't have that Knight, though? Like,
No. What I'm saying is you're going to win a lot of the games where you go 2-drop Knight into history, into just like removal spell, and you'll win every game that you go history into history.
No, I'm saying that you win every
you're
game.
Just increasing. You're increasing the value of the first history by playing Knights.
Sure, I think we're saying the same thing. I'm just saying I don't know that the Knight matters. I think you just win every game you go history into history.
Oh, I agree with that. I'm saying that I think you win basically every game you go
get
Knight
to increase
into history.
those nut draws by playing extra Knights.
Right.
Yeah, right. I agree. So I hated the blue-white, and I got people telling me this. Spencer, why do you hate this deck? It's so good. It's like, the only games you win are when you go history. And the thing is that is in fact broken. I actually history reminds me a lot. And I think I said this during the set review. It reminds me a lot of Gideon Allies Zendikar, where it's just like sometimes it's just an unbeatable advantage. It's like you can't
If
build
your opponent is trying to 1-for-1 you out of the game,
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I don't know if you've gotten to beat a whirler yet by fatal pushing the chain whirler when the history destroys itself, but it's so stupid.
I have not done that, but that's unfair because oh man, because you're going to be on 4 mana,
it's
you're
so
just going to
dumb.
play another history. That's so cool.
Or just like a guy. It doesn't even need to be a history. Like if you just play like anything, if you literally play a spell plus a fatal push on that turn, your opponent is just dead. They've taken at that point like 10 damage and most likely have no blocks.
Yeah, it's funny because like when we saw History Benalia, I'm like, is there enough knights to make this good? And what I think we didn't realize is that it was, oh no, you just doesn't matter.
It makes 2 of them, so there's probably enough. Yeah, no, it's just so I think you'd have to give me a pretty good reason not to play a deck playing History of Benalia.
Yeah, and we're testing.
I don't know what the best iteration of that is.
Yeah, you're testing for the Pro Tour, right? Which means you're just going to play whatever 75 you want, and I'm specifically testing green decks. So we're testing a little bit different stuff, but I agree with you 100%. I know that people really didn't like History Benalia out of the blue-white deck sideboard. They wanted different things. I actually think it's super powerful. I think that the sequencing can be unbeatable if you build your sideboard correctly, where you just transform into this mid-range deck that gets to like have these double history draws, plus super powerful late game draws, and then we have these, the Jerry Thompson black-white deck, for example, right?
Yeah.
Where people were really obsessed with like, well, this doesn't crew my Heart of Kiran, and it's like, why are you trying to crew Heart of Kiran during these turns instead of attacking with these knights or like?
Yeah, I mean, you're not playing Mardu anymore. Right?
No,
you're just playing a mid-range deck, and Heart of Kiran is your opponent's removal. It's taxing your ability to tap out, it's helping you kill their Teferi. It's just playing the role of sometimes unbeatable.
Yeah, and pressuring. I think
or making a race awkward, right? Like if you just have Heart and they don't, it's kind of like if you have History and they don't. It's just very difficult to interact with profitably.
I agree. Heart of Kiran is another card that I'm way higher up on. So last season, people were texting me and messaging me a lot about like green red dinosaurs, and it was like you should not be playing Heart of Kiran in this deck. This is the worst card in this deck. Do not play it. Tomorrow, I would say you better be playing Heart of Kiran. You will lose so many matchups if you're not playing it. You need to pressure their planeswalkers. You need to do this. You need to do this. Like, I actually can't believe how much Dominaria has changed Standard. I'm also glad that we're both playing Standard right now. But there are cards that just shot up back in stock. I think planeswalkers are way better than they were before, which is crazy because there's more hearts. But also, Fatal Push. I was texting Matt about this today. Like, one of the reasons that I like green-black decks over the green-red decks in this testing, Fatal Push is really important. Like,
yep. Just it gives you spell turns early in the game that you just don't get otherwise.
And to be fair, one of the things that green red can do is it can kill all of the cheap creatures out of the decks that want to maximize its Heart of Kirans, but it can't kill Heart of Kiran really well. So you have to bank on them not playing another creature to crew it multiple turns in a row. So it kind of just depends on how you want to attack that. But that being said, that just makes the 3-mana Gideon all the more valuable in Standard right now.
I think both Gideon and Karn are outstanding at the moment. Karn is really nice with Heart of Kiran too, just because he has so much loyalty that you can actually crew on offense and defense, or threaten to crew on offense and defense.
Yes.
At the same time as you draw more cards, get deeper into your deck.
Yeah.
He's interesting, but just coming in with so much loyalty is really powerful, and not being able to get like color screwed off of him.
Yeah.
Right. You're not trying to play like another double white card or whatever in your.
One of the things that I hope that I was clear upon on changing the way and including this segment again is that it's no longer what will we play tomorrow and why. It's what we are playing right now and why. Because I think that gives you the information of what we're trying to learn and giving that information back to the listeners.
Yeah,
So I hope
that's the hope.
yeah, I hope that was helpful because that was actually a fun segment for me. The problem is I feel like we could do that for another 45 minutes, which might be a dangerous segment.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's go on to our training grounds. So this week we want to talk about from FNM to beyond, and I think that this is probably. I think it's the most common question I get. You get this message a lot on Facebook. I would assume too, Michael, where like people want to understand how to transition from their local weekly event to PPTQs or GPs or 1Ks or SCGs, right? Like this is the thing that people just ask me all the time. Like, what's different? What do I need to think about? What do I need to do?
Yeah, I agree that this is a common question, and it's one that I think we can help with.
Yeah, so I broke this down into a couple things. I broke this down into what the FNM style events do and like what happens when you start feeling this way, transitioning into competitive REL, the benefits, and then our tips. So let's go over the first thing. And one of the things that I hate about where I'm at in Magic, and I might not feel this way next year because I'm going to a lot of GPs, but I just hated that I had to play so many local events this year. Like, I have to play Wednesday Night Magic this week to lock in my second buy. Like, I just have to do it. And it really bugs me. And the reason it bugs me is because I X1 or better every single one of these events. They don't help me anymore. And I feel like other people probably feel this way, where it's like, this is boring. Like, unless I'm just trying to grind packs, which, by the way, you could just go do anything else and get way more money than you're doing playing an FNM. It feels boring to a lot of people. And Michael, you felt this pretty fast, right? Like, outside of local legacy events, you just didn't want to play local Magic after a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point, you're just not getting a whole lot out of it. And you're also actively detracting from other people's experience because it's hard to feign interest in something that's not holding it.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed...
It kind of goes both ways, right? Like, you start growing out of it, and it's not a good fit for you anymore.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed specifically this week is that the match that I lost, because the player conceded to me because I did need the Planeswalker points. And I think, shout out to John Buchanan, by the way, he literally locked me for second buy by conceding to me. I just said, hey, John, like, if you concede to me, I'm probably 100% to get this buy. Like, and he's like, yeah, okay, here you go. And it was amazing. But one of the things I noticed about the match that upset me is that I just paid zero attention. I did this, and this is going to be a training grounds that we'll do later, but it's being invested in your games. And I noticed that this week I had zero investment in every single match I played in paper. Zero investment. I didn't even care. And it only cost me one match. Right? I lost one match from having zero investment. And that's actually a problem. Because that tells you, like, you didn't need to be invested in your games to win your matches. And that's bad. It means you just spent, if you played 3 rounds, you probably wasted 2 hours. If you played 5 rounds, you wasted 4 hours. Like, what did you do in that time you couldn't be dedicating to something else? And I think that what happens is it lets you know, like, hey, man, if you're X1ing or XOing every single one of these events, these other players, while you're crushing them into the dirt, and maybe that's good for them, it's probably not that uplifting for them. Because as much as I wish that I could take the time, and I try to help every player I beat, a lot of them don't want to hear it. A lot of them don't want to have that conversation with me. And, you know, what is the time to take that next step? And for me, it was.
I think just when it stops holding your interest, right? I mean, I think when you're looking
I had
for
zero
a bigger
interest
challenge.
in these matches, right? And I think that one of the things that Oasis did recently is they switched from these really high EV winner boxes, where it was guaranteed 4 rounds. Everybody that went 4-0 won a box or store credit to get a box. And they switched. And when they switched, what happened is less competitive players showed up. And now if I go undefeated, I don't win $100. Right? So now my each round I win is worth less money. And what I noticed is I don't care anymore because the amount that I have to be good at Magic to win a round decreased when the number of players increased and the competition decreased. That's nothing against these players, right? Like, I'm so happy they're experiencing Oasis games. I'm so happy that they're trying to win matches of Magic that are worth double what they would get anywhere else because Oasis has such a good price support. But for me as a player, it's like I might rather be streaming on a Wednesday night and playing a competitive league on Moto than what I'm doing today.
Right, and I think that like a lot of that is that people have to start somewhere, and having an event that's a little less top heavy and more friendly to newer players is a really good way to get people in the door. It's a really good way to get people interested in playing format, things like that. But at a certain point, it's not an event that's designed for you anymore. And I think when you start feeling like your FNMs are, I mean, obviously you're allowed to play, you're allowed to attend, but they're not events that are catered towards you. You really should be looking at playing at least some competitive REL events and seeing if that's something that you also enjoy.
Yeah. The next thing that we have on this is what does the next step for you mean? And I think that this can mean a lot of different things. We had a comment, not even a comment, just a post on our Facebook group that's usually the last week of the week before that was like your and this is a hashtag always improving moment for me. We had a person that said, you talked about your PPTQs and they seem super easy compared to ours. This person, I believe, was in Australia. I have had Australian teammates, by the way, and between Australia and New Zealand, they have about 2 to 3 PPTQs per season. So it's really hard to qualify outside of the 2 GPs they get because they're just way out there, right? And one of the things that I learned from this post is that, one, Utah Magic is in a really weird place where we have a lot of game stores. I have never not qualified for an RPTQ that I wanted to qualify for, but to be fair, I also haven't played more than 3 PPTQs in a season, and I don't know how long. But I think that 2 things happen in these situations that people need to understand. One, if there's a ton of RPTQs or PPTQs in your area, it probably means that people are getting better at a faster rate than other places. And 2, it still makes it easier for you. Like, you can't deny the fact that the more chances you have, the better your chance is. But what does this next step mean for you? Because for us, it's PPTQs, right? Because we're in Utah, and we have 7 billion game stores. Also, I just needed to do my hashtag always improving. I said that 6 players had qualified for the Pro Tour from Utah in the last 3 years. After doing some math off the top of my head, it's closer to 20. 20 Utah players have qualified for the Pro Tour in the last 3 years. So, 6 of my best friends, not including myself, have qualified for the Pro Tour in the last 3 years. My best friends. But it is closer to 20 Utah players have qualified for the Pro Tour in the last 3 years. So that was a mistake on the last podcast. I just wanted to throw out there. But let's say you're not from Utah, Michael. I mean, you're from the East Coast. And there's like 16 SCGs you can go to a year. And you want to move from FNM. Sure. That seems like a really good next step.
No, I agree. I think just like getting yourself into a spot where you're going to routinely play against players who are better than you are is the best thing you can do to improve.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about going from, maybe it's PPTQs, maybe it's SCGs, maybe it's GPs, maybe whatever it is, maybe it's 1Ks, whatever it is, maybe you're transitioning from that regular REL, that level 1 judge test, to that competitive REL. So what are we talking about here? So the first thing that you're gonna have to realize, and for some reason this is really hard for a lot of players. I don't know why, because I if you play any game with me, Michael, you're not taking a move back. That's not happening. But for some reason, a lot of people have a really hard time with understanding that, like, when you make a move, it's a move. By the way, in chess, it's not even if you make a move. It's if you touch a piece on the board, your opponent can say, "All right, you touched that piece. Where are you putting it?" So in chess, like, probably the most skill intensive game where it's like every decision you make that's it. That's the thing that's happening. You don't even get to touch pieces on the chessboard without your opponent, without you moving those pieces. Like, you need to be thinking that far ahead. And so for a lot of people in Magic, they learn through making mistakes, and they think they get to make those mistakes throughout the game. And the truth is that when you get to the level of a PPTQ or an SEG or a GP or a 1K, that's not how you get to learn anymore. But you do get to learn that way, but it's going to cost you more because you don't get to take that move back.
Yeah, so I think in addition to that, just the level of communication that's expected between you and your opponent is a little bit higher.
That's actually the next 2 points.
That you'll kind of find that you're really... one of the things that I actually really like about competitive REL is you get away from a lot of the tricks that the most spikes, aggravating players in your play area like to try to run. Everyone typically has a good enough understanding of it. Sure. I mean, I think this is one of the biggest benefits of no takebacks either, right?
Yeah,
like, there's a lot less.
So I want to just be clear with our podcast listeners about this. So one of the things that they're afraid of is that person that aggravated you and just, like, tried to punch you into the ground is that player that's going to show up at that PPTQ or that SEG. And the truth is you guys are going to call a judge. You're going to say what happened. And that's going to be the deciding factor. That person isn't going to trick you. He doesn't get to deceive you. And one of the things that happens at the local spike event is that local spikes are the problem with spikes. People think that, like, that every person that goes to a PPTQ is that player that's going to try and trick you. The truth is, I just want to understand what you're doing, and then I want to try and beat you. That's it. That's the whole story. It's so much different than the guy that's, like, trying to get you to say the wrong thing and then trick you. That doesn't happen once I'm trying to qualify for the Pro Tour. I don't have the mental energy to do that. It's not worth my time.
Yeah, so I think that, like, just moving towards competitive REL typically, actually, although you might think that it would put you in more situations like that, I think the standard for communication and the ability to call a point during a game really actually eliminates a lot of the worst things about playing against just people who are difficult to play against because they force every game to be sort of an ordeal.
Yeah, there's a
and
local player
along with that, the expectation is that you know the rules, and that goes both ways.
Yes. One of the players that I'm thinking of that I won't name is, like, this player used to do so well. This might actually be a benefit of the PPTQ system. I'm thinking of a player that used to do so well at PTQs, would top 8 a bunch, never won a match once the top 8 hit. Like, just couldn't win one. And what happened is this player would try and trick people into agreeing with them and, like, just mind tricks. And the thing is that the beauty of the new system, right, these PPTQs, the way that GPs worked, how much better people had gotten because of PPTQs, because of the SCG circuit, is that when I'm playing a match with Matt Kling or Michael Hinderrocker or Quentin Pierce, we're going to just say what's happening and what our intentions are, and that is the communication that's happening. Because that's what's important. And there's a few things in this that we're not kind of covering. Is one, like Michael said, you're expected to know the rules. Like, if you missed a trigger, like, you missed a trigger, man. If you did something wrong, you did something wrong. And if it's something that I'm supposed to tell you of, I'm supposed to tell you of it. And acting like that's a problem, if you find that to be a problem, the next step is not correct for you. At this point, you are responsible for the things that you're responsible for. You understand the game rules at the point where you understand the game rules, and it's just time for you to do that.
Right, but one of the best things about that is that those things all go both ways, and
it's 100% equal all the time.
It creates an equal playing field in a way that doesn't always exist if your opponent is willing to try to put pressure on you in sort of unethical ways.
I completely agree. Despite everything, there are very few games at a PPTQ or a GP or a RPTQ where I feel scummed. Like, it just doesn't happen. And if you feel scummed, it's either one, because somebody did something really unethical and the judge probably got it wrong, which is super rare. People love to blame the judges and love to blame these things. It just doesn't happen that often. Or two, like, you just didn't understand what was happening and you did something wrong, and you need to take ownership of that. But I want to transition out of this transitioning competitive REL, because while these things feel big, right? The truth is that it's both ways, like you said, right? I don't get takebacks, you don't get takebacks. I need to keep a clean board, you need to keep a clean board. I didn't know the rules, you didn't know the rules. But there are benefits to this. One is that the decisions you're making are worth more. The things that I'm doing are worth more than things that I would be doing at an FNM.
Yeah, I think it's easier to justify the time you're putting into something as the level of competition grows, as you're playing for more. And I think that ultimately there's just a lot more. There's a lot more. You get a lot more out of beating someone who is extremely talented than you do from beating the same people every week.
Yeah. The next thing that I have on here is we both mentioned it, right? That higher competition. The players that you think are going to show up at these PPTQs, these GPs, it's actually lower than you think. What's actually happening is these people, just like you, want to get better. They want to improve. They want to qualify for the Pro Tour. And that level of competition gets a little bit higher, and you get to see the best. Those people that were forwarding their FNMs, they're now saying, well, I want to go to a GP, and I want to try and win money. Like cash money, right? The dollar bills, y'all. And they show up, and just like you, that's how they want to win. And it's kind of beautiful. Like, GPs are super fun because I can't express the number of times that people tell me about bad GP matches they had. And I was like, well, were you a great opponent? Because for me, I have a lot of great matches at Grand Prix where me and my opponent, we're being honest with each other, we're communicating, and we're just trying to see who built the better deck, one, who's going to win, and it is beautiful. It is pure magic that I think that Michael kind of hit on. I don't know that you get it other places.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like the percentage of matches you play where both players actually played very, very well is a lot higher, and I think there's a lot more satisfaction in beating great players. And realistically, although you'll definitely sometimes have unpleasant matches of Magic, I think that's just true at every level. And
it just doesn't matter where you are.
No, that can happen at your local games, or just Grand Prix.
And you play way more of these than I do. I have significantly less unpleasant matches of Magic at a Grand Prix than I do. And I don't even know that I had an unpleasant match at the Pro Tour. Your level of the expectation of you is so much higher, and the way that you present yourself and the way that you do things, you need to be so much more professional that it just eliminates so many of the problems.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
it's definitely just a higher standard.
Can we talk really quickly about just the benefit of the fact that you're playing for something. So the SEG Invitational used to qualify for the Pro Tour. I don't believe they even do it anymore. I think they got rid of them after they deleted the qualification. But the fact that you're playing to go to the highest level of Magic, it's a big benefit. Like, it means that people. We talked earlier on this podcast about like having the same mindset of people. Once your opponents are also trying to qualify for the Pro Tour, I think it does a similar thing where you know that that person's trying to do what you're trying to do, and it creates a level of respect that you don't get in other places. Like I just respect the person for just trying and
Definitely.
being. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, in addition, it's just like if your goal is to play the most high-level Magic possible, you know, PPTQs and subsequently GPs are sort of the natural escalation of that, and
Yeah.
that culminates ideally in qualifying for, you know, a Pro Tour, multiple Pro Tours. But I think that playing events at a higher level just it gives you an idea of sort of what you like about Magic, and if it ends up that you don't really like competitive Magic as much as you thought you might, it's, you know,
It's so easy to
totally
take a step
fine.
back and go back to it in FNM.
Right, exactly. But I think that without exposing yourself to higher level competition, you won't have the chance to
Go that way.
to decide for yourself.
So let's wrap this up with some tips. Here's the ones that I wrote down, and I'd just like you to be a soundboard on this. Surrounding yourself with others. This doesn't have to be as complicated as making a testing team. People love to make it a testing team. I think just having a soundboard, like whether it's one player, whether it's 4 players, like Magic events are fun when you're rooting for multiple people. People really like to culminate this in team events. I think that we've learned that that's a little bit harder than we thought it was. But that being said, the happiest I've been outside of me qualifying for a Pro Tour, and even maybe above me qualifying for a Pro Tour, is Quinn qualifying for a Pro Tour, Chris winning a PPTQ for the first time, Casey qualifying for a Pro Tour, Michael and Danny getting silver, Matt getting bronze. Like, those are some of the happiest moments in my Magic career, and the game is so much more fun when you're invested in more than just yourself. And also when your results and your preparation helps other people.
I agree. One of the other things that I really like about playing more high-level events is that this says being willing to be wrong and learning from it, but one of the things I like is that it helps you separate your play from the result a little bit, because I think the more competent the players you play against, the more often you get punished for the mistakes you make. And alternatively, the more often both players are able to recognize, even someone making less mistakes and still losing. I think just helps you separate a little bit your results, your play rather, purely from your results. And I think that that's one of the biggest steps you can take forward in terms of really trying to get better.
The next thing that I have is being willing to be wrong and learn from it. The number of times that people play one GP and have one bad experience, one RPTQ have one bad experience, play their first Pro Tour, have a bad experience. I think that the truth is that people are human and you can have a bad experience, but you are also human. And you need to realize the things that you can do to improve and build upon that. Do the things that are right for you, that will help those other people that we just talked about when we share ourselves with others, and it will become more fun. And you have to be willing to admit that, sometimes Michael Henderrocker is just better than you at Magic. It's just a fact of life. You're going to have to get over it. He's going to be the star of your podcast. I love you, bud. But
I think that just just being in a learning mindset is kind of the best thing you can do to improve in the long term, right? That being right now isn't really important.
Yeah, it's because here's the thing is, right, if you surround yourself with those people and then also you're both willing to learn, you're both more likely to succeed, right? Because you were both willing to do that. Whoever that is, whatever situation you're putting yourself in, if you are willing to be wrong and learn from somebody else, even if that person is your opponent, you're more likely to do better next time. And that's really important in these situations. Because you are very unlikely to do well at your first Pro Tour. You are very unlikely to do well at your first PPTQ. You're very unlikely to do well at your first GP. You're very unlikely to do well at your first SEG. But if you're willing to learn from the experience, you're more likely to do well at your next one.
Definitely. I think that's all you can really hope for. And that's true in like pretty much everything you do, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's hard to be great at something the first time you do it. And I think if you're realistic with your expectations for yourself and what you hope to get out of really whatever you're doing, I think you're likely to be able to improve, be able to be honest with yourself, and adjust your expectations accordingly.
So the next thing that I have here is understanding upfront costs. This is something I was really bad at this year, that I'll improve on next year, is just understanding like what the upfront cost of the things you're trying to do is. So first of all, PPTQs, they're going to be more expensive than your weekly events. SEGs and GPs, they're going to be more expensive than that. You got to travel, you got to do like, and an understanding that like outside of some of the best players in the world, you got to understand what your win percentage is going to be. I think I've cashed 2 GPs in my life. I've also traveled very small distances for GP, so maybe I'm a bad example. But Michael, you cash since getting silver, you cash about 50%. That being said, you're probably still not up on Grand Prix events, right? Like you're probably
last year
close to even or down.
Last year I came out slightly ahead. I am probably ever so slightly down this year.
Yeah, and you're literally a professional. Like the definition of a professional Magic player is you. And to be fair, if you were platinum, you'd be ahead, right? Because
Sure.
Yeah.
But realistically, I don't think anyone plays Magic to make money. I mean,
but that's my
if you
point,
spend
though.
as much time playing Magic as if you spend that much time doing basically anything else, it would almost have to be more profitable.
Yeah, there's a reason that I spend as much time as I do in my job instead of playing Magic.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it just
no.
It just depends,
I'm just saying. I'm saying that like we've gone through some transitions on this podcast, and part of that is the fact that like I dedicate a large percentage of my job or my time to my job, and you have to understand what the costs are for what you're doing. Time is money. That's just factual. And I think Michael will get there, right? Like he's gonna play Magic profitably, and it's gonna be great for this podcast. But there was a time where Michael, was missing day 2 of Grand Prix Portland. There was a time where, Michael missed a Pro Tour, and those are pills you have to swallow. You have to accept that that's going to happen.
Yeah,
if you're not willing to accept that,
it's not always going to break your way.
Yeah, if you're not willing to accept that, you're just going to be unhappy. And we'll go into our next thing because I think I can speak more to this. I've never missed cash at a legacy open on the SEG tour. I just have cashed every single one I've played, but I also accept the fact that I've missed cash twice on the standard tour. Like it's part of it. And when you go to 1Ks, right? Like you're paying $40 and you're betting. This is actually true. I think of competitive leagues on MTGO, right? Like, all right, I'll bet you this money that I'm going to do well enough.
Sure.
And I think that when you get into competitive Magic, that's what you're saying. And you need to accept those upfront costs. You need to accept travel. You need to accept the things that are happening. But also, you need to understand that like the experience that you're getting is not worth nothing.
Right. Well, and I mean, I think that the big thing is just that the experience and the process is a lot of the fun.
It is. I mean, it's way more fun than my job.
It's mostly all of the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this up because I want to just give some quick travel tips. We've done this a couple times. So I just want to say that we got some questions in the Magic Players of Utah Facebook group this week. So I booked Vegas for the GP, and what we did is we actually got a timeshare. And I think that one of the things that people don't do enough is they don't look at hotels, timeshares, and Airbnbs and stuff like that. Look at everything you can get, figure out what works for you. Also, carpooling. If the time is available to you to carpool, it's way cheaper than flights. If missing work is expensive, you should just take the flight. Those are my biggest tips for travel.
Yeah, I mean, I think try to come up with a budget that you can stick to, and just make sure that Magic isn't putting a lot of financial pressure on your life, because I think that will make experience unpleasant.
Yeah, it actually kind of reminds me of people that I go to Vegas with sometimes. People go to Vegas and you'll leave and they'll have had this terrible experience, and I'm like, dude, we did this and this and this and this and it was super fun. And they're like, yeah, but I lost $400, and it's like, you mean you spent $400, right? Because you shouldn't have gone into this experience and thought you were going to turn that into $1,200. That's weird. Like,
right.
That's, and I think that while Magic isn't gambling because it's a lot more skill based, you should still go into it expecting reasonable expectations. The one last tip that I would give for travel is do not go with people you won't enjoy yourself with. Because regardless of what happens at the Grand Prix, regardless of what happens at the SG, it'll be a bad experience. It is worth $100 to not go with a person that you hate.
Definitely.
It's just. Also, I go to a lot of Grand Prix with Michael Hinderocker, so maybe I only go to.
Maybe you're making bad life choices.
No, I love you. Shut up. All right, so that's it for FNM Beyond. You can go to patreon.com/ccmtg, become a patron. This has been really fluctuating this month. I don't know what to say. So our current goal is the one that we already achieved 3 times this month, but it's oh my gosh, I can't even find it. Our current goal is just the card of the week. So technically, I'll be honest, if we don't get $8 more by May 31st, we will not send out card of the week this month because I will hold to it, but we'll get it, so it doesn't matter. That being said, after that, it is a Pro Tour exclusive episode. If you want me to go get all of my friends that are qualified for the Pro Tour and get them on an exclusive podcast for you, it's not that much more money. It's at $500 a month. We're gonna do that for you, and it's super exciting. So, you can find me at Spencer38. You can find Michael at MagicMikeyMTG. You can find Mason, our technical producer, at Mason E. Clark. You can join the conversation on Facebook on the Constructed Critics family. If you're a patron of $5 or more per month, you get access to the Constructed Critics group where we post deck lists. We talk about RPTs. It's very in-depth stuff. If you want to be in-depth like that, $5 or more per month on Patreon. Check it out. You can also join the clan by messaging me at Spencer13Dev on MTGO, or Quinn, that's at Earthstripe, STRYPE. That's URSTY. I just skipped the U for some reason there.
URTHSTRYPE.
That's way better than whatever I said.
Earthstripe, spelled like
Earthstripe,
badly
obviously.
but correctly. Badly but correctly. Yeah.
You can also join the conversation with hashtag Will It Be Good on Twitter. If you tweet it, we will read it. It used to be Mason, but unfortunately some technical stuff happened. As he seemed to great episode, Swiss +3 is definitely going to make me a better Magic player. Patrick top 8 this weekend and almost won. Shout out to Patrick. Super cool to see. that one episode of what Mason and I talked about helped him out. I'm really sorry for my voice, Michael. I've been sick for like a week and a half.
Adrian tweets, attempting to win my first PPTQ without a Tune with Aether. Pretty excited.
We did skip Bob missed the opportunity for hashtag would that be good with wondering the ways to put up the volume on your mic. So apparently Mason's mic has been off the last couple times he's been on the podcast. We fixed it last week. But to Adrian, here's the thing. There's not a world in which Impulse is not better than a Tune with Aether.
You think Adventurous Impulse is better than a Tune with Aether? That's a like a flaming hot take.
So a Tune with Aether is the worst ban of all time. Like, if you wanted to hurt that deck, you should have just banned Whirler Virtuoso. Because we had the same problem. Like 2 months later, Matt Kling top 8 at a GP with freaking Grixis Center. Like, a Tune with Aether was never the problem. It never was.
It was great. And Adventurous Impulse is a lot worse than a Tune with Aether.
I will just agree to disagree.
Okay.
Yeah, so yay CCMT Hangout announcement. I'm finally moved. I'm dying right now, but I'm not dying the way that I was at the beginning of the year.
But you don't have to move, so it's good news.
Yeah, I'm not
news,
dying and moving, and my
the good
kids.
News.
Yeah, so all of the patrons of $10 or more, we have a schedule set up to do monthly hangouts, and we'll kind of switch off what we're doing. We're gonna do leagues together. We're gonna do watching leagues together. We're gonna do deck building together, and we'll take input on other things we can do. But there will be a monthly hangout, just with everybody who can show up. It will also be recorded and posted for the patrons of $10 or more. Super cool stuff coming on the Patreon. This is just one of 2 announcements on this hashtag. Would that be good? Andrew says, why don't you read it? I actually can't talk.
Andrew says, well, I made my first top 8 of the Modern 1K at my local game store running Green Black Tron. Very happy with how far I've come. Hashtag would that be good? And that is awesome. It is always sweet to do well at an event where you feel like you put effort into it. So
it's also cool, like this person feels like they've improved, right? And that's the whole point of this podcast. Like the fact that
exactly. Like Magic is hard, and it's really sweet to do better than you've done before. Like that's.
Yep. Please reply to this tweet with your Green Black Tron list so that other people playing the deck can see what you did and try to help you and themselves improve upon this.
Adrian now tweets, scrubbed out of the PPQ today. Didn't play amazingly well, but one of the squad made top 8, so good day overall. Seeing old faces was nice too. You should have just played a 2 with Aether, Adrian. I don't know. Seems like a strong trend.
I guarantee, had I been able to play the PPTQ this weekend, I would have won with Adventurous Impulse. Super easy guarantee because I didn't get a play. But
you make that guarantee for like a PPTQ this weekend? 'Cause that's like a way more extreme guarantee.
Well, I don't think I would play it this weekend.
Oh, well, that's disappointing. But you would play a Tune with Aether. Yes, exactly. I don't know if everyone can hear Mason, but
yelling.
you had the same thought that I just had.
Yeah.
Which was that you would always play a Tune with Aether.
That's not even true.
I'd also play Rogue Refiner, though. My mid-range deck's going to be a lot better than your mid-range deck.
Just order for the first time from Oasis Games SLC. Thanks for the foils. Hashtag would be good. Dude, if you guys haven't ordered from Oasis Games SLC with that code, you're just missing value, guys. You're just missing value.
Yeah. With 15% off, it's real good. Just worth checking out next time you're thinking about some cards. And Mason tweets, constructed clash, hashtag would that be good? I have no idea what that means.
What do you mean you don't know what it means?
What does constructed clash mean?
Alright, this is like probably my favorite announcement since the Patreon started. Mason and I will be taking the spot of what Matt Kling used to do for the YouTube channel, but it's way better. So Mason and I will be doing a weekly video series in which we play against each other. and one of the video, we will actually be recording 2 separate videos from both sides of the matchup. One will be posted on YouTube, and one will be posted Patreon only. And we'll just switch off, so it doesn't matter who wins. We will be talking about mulligans, our play decisions, our sideboarding. We'll have a post matchup conversation about what happened in the matchup, how we felt about the matchup. That will be Patreon only also. I'm really excited about this. One of the things that Matt and I tried to do. Also there will be a match deck tech at the beginning where we talk about the deck, why we're playing, what we're playing. We are very much trying to do this very in-depth version of like, this is this deck. Let's go play a matchup. Here's what we thought about the matchup afterward. Here's why we made the decisions we made. And Mason and I are. This does a couple things, not even 2. Mason and I are trying to improve together. We want to get better. We want to share that information with listeners, and we want to provide you with value. One of the things that is really important to me is providing value to our listeners. And I've been waiting my whole life for somebody like Mason. No, but for real, like Mason and I are really passionate about this. Like, yeah, you get it. We're really excited about this. So thank you so much to Mason for this, and stay tuned for the first Constructed Clash on both YouTube and on Patreon. So thank you everyone for listening. Michael, what did you learn this week?
Well, I learned what your limit for talking in an episode is, because your voice will crap out on you.
Hold on. I have a virus that I got from my son who was in the hospital, and I'm still doing the podcast.
That's powerful.
My son's virus is powerful. I agree. He is killing me, and he's fine now.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the best. The best part of being sick is when everyone else gets sick with the same thing you were sick with, but
Dude,
you're
I
not
got
sick
2
anymore.
of my coworkers sick.
Did it make you happy inside?
No, not even a little. You're a horrible human.
Okay. Well, I learned I'm a horrible human, but I think I just enjoy the good things in life.
Yeah, I learned something interesting about this. We might need to do just entire episodes of what we're playing and why.
Sure, that would be interesting.
I'm afraid of it because I feel like it's just like 700 tangents. So like as a producer, it's like, ooh, this is scary. But honestly, I feel like we could have talked about Standard for like 2 hours today.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot lately.
Yeah,
and it's a pretty interesting format at this point.
I also think that we're pretty close on a couple of things. So I'm really happy with that. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you guys all next week.
See ya.